Okay, I think we are live on the show. So let's wait for another 20 seconds, and I'm sure everybody's trying to join in. That's what I can see from the YouTube stream channel. Okay, good evening, everyone. We are live on the very first episode of our talk show, and as we call it, the face and sound of leadership. Hi, everybody. I am Monita, and I am taking care of Anudeep's corporate communication and PR and brand management. So, we've been really excited and eagerly anticipating this talk show, which is for the first time. And well, to start with, since I can see many of them have already joined, uh, it's often said that leadership is a conversation which drives people to authenticity and bring out the true potential. And we are so privileged to host this show with one such leader and a conversationalist in our virtual studio. A very, very warm welcome, Indrani. How are you doing, Indrani?
Thank you so much, Monita. Doing well. I hope all of you have been safe and are keeping well. All of you here on screen, as well as everybody who's logged in. Thank you very much for logging in. And I think this is a very important conversation. And as always, it's a privilege to be part of anything that Anudeep does.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for your time once again. So, when it comes to Indrani, she has been one of the inspiration, of course, both in my personal and professional life. Uh, she's been a absolutely mind blowing and an exemplary testament of what you called a true leader is. She's the co founder and COO of Growth Shift. With more than 2 decades of experience, she's been a former CHRO in Tata's and CK Birla group of companies with an extensive experience in setting up digital HR and leadership engagement, of course, across sectors. So she's been a part of the Stanford Seed Transformation, through which she volunteers to make businesses across Africa and India more effective through leadership development and sustainability. And needless to say, her love and passion for tech has equipped organizations with unique EdTech and HR tech products in the recent years. So, in her current role as a COO, she aims to support 500 million people across the globe to rediscover professional happiness post the pandemic. That's an incredible, and even if I start saying more about, I think we will not be able to continue the session. So thank you once again, Indrani, for taking out time for us to be here with us today. And I am keen to know and learn more about the discussions that's going to follow in the course of the day. So
Thank you,
next we have
Monita.
with us
Thank you.
from our Anudeep, most welcome. So next we have with us from our Anudeep leadership team, the head of human resources, Sushmita Chaudhary. So hello, Sushmita. Hope you're doing fine.
Absolutely fine. Thank you, Monita. Thank you so much. Looking forward.
Great to see you on screen. Same here, same here. So Sushmita has over 17 years of industry experience in Indian, American, and European firms. As a dexterous HR practitioner, she's been into multifaceted HR transformational roles, intensely associated with change management and very importantly, people's excellence initiatives. She's been quite active with NHRD and the Indian Society for Training and Development. She has an avid interest in something very special, that is the human behavior science. So, Sushmita, we are all very interested and waiting for the talk show. And also to the audience, Sushmita has this is the first talk show on behalf of Anudeep. Sushmita is joining. So, welcome again, both of you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
So,
Thank you.
as I can see, as I scroll down, I can see many who have already joined the sessions. So I think let's get back to why we are here today. A topic, or if you may call it, an human UN aspiration, which speaks volume of future, not just of work or careers or livelihoods, but holistically, it's an endeavor to reach the farthest. Well, to elaborate, the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development emphasizes that global development requires a more integrated vision grounded with sustainability, equity, and inclusion. Now, sustainable development is not just making progress towards poverty, as in essentially narrow poverty. It includes not just decent employment or health targets amid the recent growing inequalities. What I think is it basically calls for, a larger vision for securing social progress and, of course, resilience for all people to ensure that it will be sustainable in the long run. So, United Nations has, taken the pledge, and it is one of the central pledges to leave no one behind, as they call it. They acronymed it as LNOB as one of its major transformative promises in the agenda. So, breaking from what we learn from the United Nations development goals to not to leave behind anything, Shushmita, over to you. In times that we are living right now, as in what we call it, quote unquote, the new normal, what do you think? To leave no one behind, what does that reflect?
Thank you, Monica. Thank you, everyone who has joined us today. And definitely, it's a privilege to be part of Anudip Foundation and take it forward. A warm welcome to Indrani, our
Thank
distinguished
you.
guest, and to each and everyone, my dear colleagues who are watching with us. And taking cue from Monita. So yes, definitely there has been a lot of changes which has come up where, and then it's been quite phenomenal also. And when we talk about this pertinent issue that has been arising due to the work from home or the remote teams or how it has been taken up, so maybe I would also like to know from Indrani that because of these changes, the kind of radical changes that has happened because of the disruptions, the kind of closures that has taken place in workplaces, lockdowns, there has been so many, I would say the unemployment rate has it has increased, and there has been a lot more focus on how to keep employees as well as from the informal economy also, how do we keep them engaged. So yes, that has probed a lot of challenges. And so my question to you would be, on this perspective, like because of this transition that has been from the kind of information economy that we were in, and as we move to this new mode of working from home economy, so how can that include all, Indrani?
Great. I think that's a great question and a very thought-provoking one. Uh, like you mentioned, I think we transitioned from an information economy to a work from home economy. And if information was the currency in the earlier economy, the currency now clearly is trust and authenticity that Monica mentioned in her opening remarks. And really, I think the challenge is how do you include all work from home as a major mode of engagement professionally is it's not a one prescription that can address all issues. It is the quick pivot that people had to do almost overnight. So there's no one size that fits all kind of a prescription, but it seems to be the best solution for the jobs at least that can be done from work from home, which thankfully is 60 to 70% of the organized sector. I won't even come to the unorganized sector yet
Absolutely.
because that's a whole different ball game. But I think I think companies across the world pivoted overnight and pivoted so well. I think that is a testimony to how agile human beings can be when the push comes to shove, and how the solution will always come out. So that's a big takeaway that we should all take, that nothing really stopped. I mean, business there was in the new normal, businesses continued, or the new BAU, one could say. But yes, I think the challenges are now very different, whether it is the nature of leadership, the nature of how companies engage with their employees. trust really is the currency there. Because at work from home, from a, let's say, command control theory X kind of a management, in a work from home scenario, what the bedrock is trust. The bedrock is trust, and the focus, from managerial perspective, is really should be on outcomes. So you got to trust your teams, and you focus on outcomes from reviews, etc. Taking again another leap, if we actually focus on the how, like I said, there is no one size that fits all. And if companies are genuinely interested in answering this question of how can we ensure that nobody in our ecosystem is left behind, I think a good starting point is taking a leaf out of the UN Charter itself. And the UN Charter, when it actually lays down of how do you execute LNOB, it actually says that, please start with data, and data not at an aggregate average level, because aggregates and averages, they really hide and mask a lot of things. But data at a disaggregated level, which means really break and slice and dice your data, find out who your marginalized communities are. Even within a company, it can be gender can be a marginalized, any of the diversity and inclusion levers can be marginalized sections. In the larger economy, it can be the unorganized sector. But really, you have to start with data at a disaggregate level. Then you go and check, get a feedback from those sections who feel marginalized, as to, hey, how can we better integrate you guys into the new normal or the new work from home. I think that's a good starting point that the UN itself lays down. It, of course, is easier said than done, but I think, as with all large scale change management initiatives, it starts with trust and it starts with leadership intent. So that's my opening, observations on your questions. But I would also love to hear your views around this.
Right. Well, yeah, yeah, very interesting. And I would say definitely as trust is the the basis, the fundamental, and to integrate the kind of the 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 people, the making it a more human centric approach, or we're having the different kind of systems, because there has been an upgradation of a lot of systems coming into place because of these the digitization that has been into the place. So my thoughts would be like, there, every industry, every sector, it needs a preparation. In this context, it needs a preparation. So as we know that there has been a lot of uncertainty that came in, and people, that is how they responded. Few have been reactive to the situation, they've responded well. But during this course of actions and the different the practices and strategies that every organization has taken place, what are the kind of red flags do you see, when it comes to leaving no one behind and building back from COVID-19? What are the kind of red flags?
I think, a point that you mentioned of preparation being there, everybody needing preparation. That's a very, very key point. And really, lack of preparation itself is one of the biggest red flags. Like you mentioned, companies could be reactive or companies could have been proactive. I think the obvious red flags of having experienced, let's say, work from home of the in the last, say, 500 odd days, the obvious ones are, of course, this complete blurring of work and life, the division,
True.
complete diffusion of
True.
that. There's,
Right.
while people are enjoying more flexibility, but people are also working longer hours. And this is across industry, across companies. Okay.
Absolutely.
The second bit, therefore, a fallout of the corollary of that is, your own personal time and space that gets a little diffused. I think the family has had to make, for those who live in households, the family has had to make such a lot of adjustments to be able to, to facilitate one or two, in a lot of cases, many multiple members of the family doing work
True.
from home, or doing work from, doing school from home. It's just
Mhm.
required so much of preparation and adjustments. So that's something I think people have done very well overnight. But the red flag still remains that it's longer hours, that it's lesser work-life balance, and in
Right.
some cases, higher levels of stress. Now, these are the most obvious ones. But if I look at a slightly more macro level, and because gender, there's been so much of work around equality and equity, especially gender equality in the last few years, and that's also part of your UN SDG goals by 2030. One of the risks, we don't yet have data to make a definitive comment, but one of the risks that I hope does not happen, but it is still a red flag to be kind of at least flagged off, is that in this hybrid, we are hearing a lot of offices now adopting a hybrid model,
True.
letting employees choose when they want to come to office and when they want to work from home, which is great from an intent perspective. But in our Indian context, what that can sometimes boil down to is, that the male member actually chooses to attend office, and the female staff members, because they have more greater responsibilities at home, actually prefer the work from home.
Right.
And because in 90% of the cases, your decision makers in companies, and I'm talking of 80-90, but there are 10-15% who
Right.
have done magnificent work, and maybe we'll also talk about that in a bit. But the major companies, 80-90% of companies, you really have male decision makers. Now, what I fear is that this may lead to a two-tier kind of a structure, or a two-level vision developing in across the leaders, because they'll suddenly see that, okay, here's one group which is present in office, therefore in front of my eyes I can pull someone quickly into into an informal meeting to quickly discuss something, take a decision. All of those
Right.
informal nuances of networking,
Absolutely.
of decisioning, even of coaching. Like you have an important meeting, right after the meeting your boss says, hey, you did two things well there, and these two things would have been better. Now, those things, my fear is that it's going to be limited now only to the population that decides to come to office, and therefore, because greater number of women will choose to work from home or will choose to avail WFH, they will actually be further at a loss in terms of these career enhancing experiences. So that's one
Right.
fear. And another fear that I have is this presentism, which means that, unless companies really work hard to fix their performance management systems that helps them to actually focus on outcomes basis data. So, which means A, availability of data, B, availability of data on the cloud so that everybody can access it, and C, just the nature of performance management and reviews that has to be done basis data. And we are not good at doing that. In India, at least culturally, there's a lot of frills that go into developing relationships at work, especially with seniors. So we don't want a situation where just being present in office and showing how hard you're working, whereas someone back home is also doing all of that while managing stuff at home, loses out. So those are, again, like I mentioned, again the caveat is very clear. I am not saying those are the issues, but those are red flags to be flagged off, or at least to be conscious of, when we are talking of adopting whatever model for the future of work, including hybrid model.
True, true, true. I completely endorse that. In fact, the patterns and the different alignments have also, changed tremendously, and it's more about not only how the technology is making or preparing everybody, making the digital way, but it's also in terms of the data, the people centric behaviors, and what are those attributes, which is very important to understand, because at the end of the day, as very rightly you have mentioned, that it boils down to ultimately, it's whether it's new economy or COVID economy, it's also about skill economy. So it's very important that we understand that it's not only about it's because of an this kind of a situation that has arisen, but it has become a must have for each of the uh, organization, and I think the different enterprises. That's really very interesting, and there's so many different sides to it. And coming from there, I have another interesting question for you, Indrani. It's like, what other impacts should we watch for in this transition to more remote work, because as there would be more remote teams growing, and there would be more options and preferences to go for this remote work. So what are these kind of impacts that might come up?
Right. Uh, that's again a very thought provoking question, because I don't think, honestly, anybody has the answers, the right answers. And I think it's time that we actually showed, whether it is leaders or CEOs or managers, or, the consulting firms who actually guide corporate India. I think it's time we showed the humility to say, hey, we don't have the answers, but can we discuss and co-create some of the answers? I mean,
Absolutely.
I remember, this was during the wave one. COVID had just struck the world, and had struck India around April, maybe last year. And you suddenly had all this, within May of 2020, you had this plethora of white papers from the, biggest firms, consulting firms, advising corporate India, advising CEOs and promoters on, how all of those V-shaped curves and K-shaped curves and U-shaped
Yeah.
recovery curves, and
True.
how by quarter three everything should, people must conserve cash right now. And I was, in retrospect, and with all due respect to all the consulting firms out there, but this was really like the biggest pandemic to have hit mankind. I think there was a need for all parties concerned to show humility and vulnerability and just say, hey, let's first just absorb what's hit us, rather than, trying to dish out solutions which, for some it may have worked, for a lot of others, it was just the usual, cost cutting, conserve the cash, don't burn cash, all of that without really, taking all stakeholders into account. Now that, I think, if ever a third wave were to hit us, and wave two, I think, was the leveling ground.
Yeah.
It basically, it was a signal to mankind that, hey, please don't jubilate. Just the moment New Year's happened, people were saying, oh, 2020 was terrible, 2021 is going to be the best year around. And then
Right.
second wave happened, right?
Right.
And that was like nature's way of saying, guys, please,
Right.
be humble, please see what's there, and get. And I think people now are far wiser, all of us are far wiser. I hope the third wave doesn't come. Even if it comes in a muted way, but at least now I don't see that arrogance and the jubilance that was there of, oh, recovery is back, and we've made our record profits. So sorry, I digressed a little bit, but this is a topic I really feel for. But to answer specifically your question as to, what are some of the impacts we should be watchful for now when we go back to work, or the new normal, I will again just go back to the basics, which is intent, leadership intent, and infrastructure. So on the leadership intent, it is really, if even during pre-COVID times you had authentic leadership, you had leadership that truly cared for workforces, as part of the thing, then their series of actions that they've taken during COVID have been guided by that philosophy. And if even pre-COVID you honestly didn't care didn't care about anything beyond your EBITDA and your revenue, then that's been the guiding philosophy even during COVID. So that's what I mean by leadership intent and infrastructure. So you have to have the foresight to really build the infra for tomorrow. So companies which really thought digital was okay, it was a fad, really would have struggled during COVID, when overnight you had to pivot. But companies which had invested in digital, not as a fad, but as a tech for future, as a, the normal thing for future, I think
Yeah.
found it far more easier to migrate even normal processes digitally. Having
Absolutely.
said all of this about, EBITDA, and it's not that entire corporate India is, works one way. There have been such brilliant, absolutely inspiring examples of corporate India, and these are again Indian companies I'm talking of. I am not even talking of, let's say, the Fortune 500 or the Unilevers or the etc., who are really role models. But even Indian companies, I mean, I'll give you two examples. Here's, in one Indian company, you have had, let's say, the top leadership, the top leader of the organization say, you can't, you must leverage a good crisis. Don't let a good crisis go to waste. and you go snip, 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 and you really streamline and cut costs, and then you make record and profit, record EBITDAs, okay, with, whereas your top line has not grown because your business has not grown. Equally, again, in another Indian company, you had the CEO actually come in a all hands town hall, and this is a big company we're talking of, say that, hey, we are all in this together. We don't know how long this is going to go, but I just want to make sure that you all have everything that you need to do while we, operate from our houses for the next few months. And by the way, all of you all must be, having a lot of psychological safety queries, etc. What's going to happen to your jobs, what's going to happen to your salaries. I'm giving you the assurance that there'll be nothing cut. We will not hire more right now, but there will be no job. All jobs will maintain. All salaries will be maintained. Maybe the bonuses, etc., might get impacted, which is fair enough, but all fixed salaries maintained. But hey, I need one promise from you guys that all the staff, I mean, you will take equal care. While we will not cut your salary, you need to ensure that everybody who works for you, it could be your maid, it could be a driver, it could be anybody, in the society who helps you, you will also not, deduct their salaries, or, not throw them out of jobs. Look at the outlook. So in the war for talent, like now, okay, people are all hanging on to their jobs, but in the war for talent, when the markets open up, I think it is anybody's guess which company will attract the best talent. So you've got both ways, and people learn. It's not that companies are good and bad. It's just people learn, people make mistakes. As long as we learn from wave one, wave two, and then move forward, uh, I think as a race, we'll be in a better place.
Absolutely. I mean, that's really profound, and that is how I think coping up and with this impact, and it has made organizations, it has made the different levels of workforces, and even redefined work, the way, the style, the pattern of work itself. And that's how they have prepared what we had started off with. And I believe majority of the organizations, I think they are ready. They are not only mentally ready for any kind of these uncertainties to tackle in future, but also ready at an operational level. So this has been one of I think a phenomenal change that has come up. So I mean, this has really given us a very wide picture of how the different segments of whether it be the workforce, the workplace, and the work itself, the style of working itself has actually reimagined. We are more or less at times hearing this, the word reimagine and reinvent. It's coming up again and
Right.
again. I guess that it's so relatable now. We are able to take it.
And it's a
Great.
beautiful word,
Right.
isn't it? It's
Right.
so inspiring.
Absolutely. It's very positive, very
Absolutely.
inspiring.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Right.
Right. Right. Thank you so much, Indrani and Shushmita, for insights. Like I was kind of noting the point out. So many things came up: leadership intent, leadership infra, technology, people-centric attitude. So all of which are very positive, and of course, every crisis gives every organization things to learn. Pandemic itself was a big lesson. There's one question which is lingering me. I was trying to ask the question to both of you. So when I open LinkedIn, so I'm talking about the change in the post or the change in the updates that people, professionals across the globe post. I could see a lot of people who have lost their jobs, unfortunately, and many of them from all layers, not just it's from all layers across. I can see people losing jobs in the pandemic. So from the leadership level, what would be your advice, or what do you think how it is possible for all of us to find their way back, to the entire gambit, to the entire game?
Yeah, and yeah, I think that's been a very unfortunate impact of COVID, and like you mentioned, it's hit all levels, and I think the hardship has been so much more at
Right.
junior, at entry levels, and middle levels. And yeah, I mean, see, the first
Absolutely.
thing, I will not give any advice, because that's one thing I've learned from COVID. There's no, we are no one to give advice. Okay, But yes, we can just maybe share some of the expertise and experience that our ears and white hair possibly give us, maybe some of that. But in this is a this losing a job, and especially during the biggest pandemic, uh, is really one of the biggest things that can impact a person, right? And each one reacts differently, but all I can say is that end of the day, just like the human race pivoted, and the world has not ended, and soon I'm sure at some point in the near distant future we'll all be it'll be a better place and a better world. Like that, one first of all, one must not lose hope. Second, and I think that's really the start point of it all, one must also not be in denial. Okay, because the more you are going to be in denial and in a negative phase, the healing takes so much longer to even start. So I think the first bit is you have to start. It's like going through a grieving process. The way you lose a loved one, if you are engaged with your job, it is almost a loss like that, and you have to go through the grieving process first. And you should not resist it. Initially you'll be in denial, but you should not resist it. The sooner you're open to it and accept it, the healing will start. After that, you can't do this really alone. You have to fall back on, I mean, some people have their family, some people have their friends, some people may have a trusted mentor or a confidant. But it is very, very important to express that, whatever emotion you're feeling. And in that at that point, it is largely negative emotion. Okay, you might feel anger, you might feel disappointment, you might feel revenge. Okay, I'm saying just express all of that negativity to a trusted person, because don't let it fester inside you. Once you, at least once emotionally, and your head and your heart is clearer of all of this, it's only then that you can actually put in place a strategy or an action. And this can take some time. I mean, for some it can take longer, some, for others it can take shorter, but this is really the process that you have to undergo. Once your head and heart is clearer, you then decide, okay, where are you right now in terms of material facts? So what's the, how long can your savings sustain you? Where do you need to cut costs? How can because this process of going back into the workforce and finding a job, especially in the pandemic, is going to take longer. It is going to take some time. It's not going to happen very soon. So you have to at least secure your family and
Right.
yourself, from a money wise. So whether it is investing in the stock market, I know people who've made a lot of short term money, at least to sustain their families in the stock market. Or you readjust your savings and put them into mutual funds, or anything that gives a slightly higher return. You do that. There are lots of these gig platforms or flexi platforms which offer, which have one-off assignments. I would highly advise people that while the job process is on, in terms of, you will have to circulate your CV, talk to people, all of that. But while that is on the side, do explore the gigs or the projects, and try and do some assignments, even if it's just volunteer assignments. It'll keep your head, it'll keep you occupied
Stay.
mentally. It'll help you not lose your skills, and it'll help you be stay positive. Okay, even if it's volunteer, do that. And in any case, volunteering, I think, has a huge healing benefit. You will yourself feel so much better, because remember, at that point, even if you've lost your job due to a pandemic, job cost cutting, you are really at your lowest point in terms of confidence, self-esteem. So it's important to get back that and work back on that, right? So volunteering, I would say, is a great way of doing that. Doing assignments on the side, and then you will notice over a few months. Oh yes, and another thing that I would absolutely recommend is reskilling. If anybody today says that they do not need it, they know everything they need to know, they're living in a fool's paradise. The world has changed even as we were grappling with it. So it doesn't matter which function you're in, what is your level, everybody must know the basics of the digital world. Okay, so, and there are these the pandemic has thrown open brilliant learning pathways, and most of them are free or heavily subsidized. It just needs time and a learning mindset. And if you can get back that joy of learning back into your life, it's going to a add skills, and b help you also in your next job, etc., because you can apply all of that. So that, I mean, during the pandemic, I for one, I had some time and I've picked up a, I've done a, I've had great joy, doing random courses, not necessarily even linked to HR, but I try to do a lot of courses which today helps me when now we've have our own startup. It really helps me there. So all of this happens, and of course, not everybody will want to open their own company, but if you even want to get back to a job, the what the HR people or your next boss will look at is how wisely did you spend this gap year. Were there new skills you picked up? How did you keep yourself positive? What were some of the assignments? And if you have some friends, etc., who are in startups, by all means join them till something comes along. But do not sit at home and mope and moan and just hope that a job will come your way, because that's not going to happen. You will have to go out there, network, open yourself to opportunities, and just take up any opportunity that comes your way. Everything else will then fall in place. So that's my two
Right,
bits on
right.
how people can get back both their mojo and get back into the workplace.
Absolutely, absolutely right, Indrani. It's all about reskilling and how importantly, how significantly we use the time that we get. So, what struck me is, on one hand, you're speaking about people, but there is another set who's the employer. Okay, so how do you think employers in this pandemic economy, if I may call that, managing economic imperatives again with the responsibility of leaving no one behind?
Yeah, I mean, I think again, no one size fits all. But I go back to my, to the thing that drives. It has to, your intent has to be clear. Obviously, if you are in a company that is absolutely tottering, and you are in a sector where, let's say aviation or hospitality, etc., which have really been hit hard, right, by the pandemic, you cannot, even if you have the best intention, you cannot but have to take some hard calls, to letting go of, of pruning, of streamlining a little bit to save the larger mass. But again, it has to be intent driven, and you just do that much which is necessary to keep the ship afloat. You do not use a pandemic situation to really make record profits and really do everything you can to have an efficiency ship. You have to have that intent and that care. So you can take a couple of hard calls at, let's say, senior management levels, who will have, let's say, corpus and some savings to fall back on. But you got to do that. You it has to be in a series of priorities. So first you first do, what you do is, some salary slashes at the highest levels, where it people can weather that storm. After that, if still required, you can maybe go till at best a senior manager, middle management level. After that, if you still need, if your company is tottering, then honestly you should shut your shop. But only after that the job cuts, etc., should start. That's my personal philosophy. There might be many people who might differ with it, but that's my personal philosophy. And in a pandemic year, I think it is gross to talk of record EBITDAs and record profits, because you should just do that much to just save the company. If it was anyway a badly run company, then you can do waves and waves of job cuts and cost cutting. You will still not be able to save the job. But I have seen, like, again, that example I mentioned of, again, an Indian CEO who said, "Hey, I'm going to take care of you. You guys have to promise me you're going to take care of your own staff back home." That's the kind of philosophy I think that we should see more and more of. And end of the day, it's not a choice of what companies do. It is about, like Shushmita mentioned at the beginning, there are some companies who've been reactive and waiting and watching and doing piecemeal cuts, and then there are some companies who are really trying to shape the conversation. Okay, really be the thought leader there. And that's where I think consulting firms, the big four, all of them, anybody which is in a position to advise and guide CEOs and promoters, they must also bring in this non-financial aspect of care, of vulnerability, of authentic leadership, along with the financial and supply chain advices that they give. because it's only then that you can include everyone, you can have sustainable companies, and you can minimize hardship. It can't be done by one single company, but that's really it. And finally, the war for talent, I think, will drive companies to adopt. It's like a great place to work company, right? Today so
Right.
many companies do that because they see real value in being labeled as a great place to work, because it then means better business, better quality of talent. It's the same with this as well. Okay, the moment you start losing the war for talent because of some short term decisions you may have taken during a particularly tough time, that's when companies, I think, will learn, and you will have a better and a more uniform, humane leadership around, which will take the tough calls but will take it only if necessary.
Absolutely. I think this has been also the time where, they've not only streamlined the value chain, but they have many companies, they have actually identified who are the right mix of talents available. So that maybe if pandemic was not there, so much of brainstorming, so much of ideation, also in terms of innovation, the different approaches to innovation also might not have happened. It might have been into the thoughts and into the vision, but it has actually happened and it has become a must have. So this has been definitely there has been a paradigm shift here. And I think shared challenges, because there was a time where it was very as a specialist, if a profile is of a specialist, so you get only specialized for that particular profile or for that function, in that function. But now I think diversification has also come into the picture. So what happens is you are also from a diversified pool of talents, that you are identified whether you would be the next leader for tomorrow. So this also has come into I think it's quite important. At the same time, it has made organizations think and rethink that how can we progress further. And in terms of diversification innovation, which I have mentioned about, another very interesting aspect which has come up, I think is based on the way we as the employer also have reacted to and have been very proactive to the different situations, especially at the transactional level. There has been if I talk about HR function, there has been a lot of transactions, that the paperwork and all things and all. I think things have become more transformational in nature now, and it's more to do with the data centric activities, and it's giving a different view. And definitely I go back to what Indrani has mentioned, because now every focus is there, how we upskill and reskill our talents. Okay, so it's very important. And at the same time, it's not only an organization imperative that they take it along, but it is also from an individual side, because to be in the job market, to be relevant, which is very important, to be relevant, one needs to have the right skill, the right competence. So this has become, I think this has become the message across, because this endeavor has started off globally, I think nationwide it has started off. And everybody they are more into an learning mode, continuous learning mode. And one thing has very I think it's been very interesting, that many of the talents, not only in terms of one being at the being a marketing expert or a digital expert, but also your passion areas, the talent for something which you like to do or might have thought of doing during your earlier days, that aspect has also come up. So there are many facets, there are many ways that things have actually come up. So I think it's time now that we will definitely, when it gets back to normal, uh, it's not that we will get back to the classic style and everything. Things will anyways continue in this manner, and it would be more into the kind of this continuous change that we would be into.
No, in fact, that is so well put, Sushmita. And if if I may add, that this thing that you spoke of, skilling, reskilling, this is the only way one can stay relevant regardless of what career level or how many years of experience. Because really, you're almost moving into a different world now, and the onus is on the individual. The individual should stop depending on on an external, whether it's the organization or the boss, etc., to give them learning pathways. They must figure out. Today the world is more open to cross functional skill sets, like you mentioned. And there are some companies who are actually encouraging, let's say, someone from HR moving into IT, someone from finance moving to supply chain, all of those cross pollination, the diversity of thoughts and skills. And the digital world makes it so easy to acquire new skills or to acquire new information. So it's really a great time to really experiment, to do something that you've always wanted to do new stuff. And even if you get back to an organized job, you can actually, nothing stops you from asking for a role change, a skill change, because if you have invested yourself in attaining a new skill, you can actually go and apply it. And then, of course, it's almost like the Great Depression, in the 1920s, 30s, when the Great Depression happened. It led to a lot of new companies and new products coming up. I almost feel that way now, with, when I look around at the startup ecosystem, and so many startups have come with, in such diverse areas, partly out of need and partly because there are problems to be solved. And it's a very exciting time now for young people, old people, to come up with their own startups. So, all in all, if I were to really take an assessment, I think COVID has equally huge benefits of moving the human race on a accelerated trajectory towards digitization, towards a new set of values, towards a more sustainable living standard. In fact, closer, I would say, to the UN SDG goals.
Right, right. So with
Right.
this transition and the movements that's been happening, and people have been realizing that what's important and what is more relevant for me also. People have been realizing this, but to understand, like, once these social distancing norms, once these are waived off, and uh, we really get back to normal. Okay, so what is that the companies will and do to ensure that no one, I mean, there is no one left behind? I mean, what is that, the one of the main factors, or what would be influencing the companies to think on that? Okay, we take care, though we have mentioned on most of the important factors, but very specifically, if I have to understand.
I think two or three things. I mean, let's say if I were in a leadership position, and if I were had to take that call of, do we reopen offices and do we call back employees back into the workspace, and will it just be the way we operated pre-COVID, or will it be different? Uh, I think the way I would do it is, first of all, I would do a lot of communication, both one to many plus a lot of informal groups, etc., just to understand. Because again, like I mentioned, there is no one size fits all. Even if you come with an hybrid thing, there's so many people in the metros especially, which have workforces from the hinterland coming in. Now, let's say you allow your workforce to come a couple of days in a month to the main office. Okay, now just for a couple of days in a month, they are not going to be able to maintain, let's say, a house in the metro and all of that. So it depends on, therefore, the demographics of your workforce. If you have a lot of young people from the hinterland coming in, you have to maybe take a call or work from anywhere. And then you have hub offices, hub and spoke offices, where, once or twice a week, nearest to your place, you can actually go and, offices like WeWork, etc. But if you are in a more, if your workforce is all, let's say, in one location largely, then yeah, you can call them back to office while maintaining safety protocols. You must also understand, I mean, even after the waves have gone by, you have to look at your gender divide. Okay, if you have mostly male, and let's say for 30% women, you have to make an effort to include them into the decision first. You can't take a decision on their behalf. It might be that
Right.
60% people are okay coming back to office, but 40%, men and women are not okay. And it's not that the majority vote wins. You will have to have then a, have to have different policies in place, so that you have a minimum couple of hours of work in the office where everybody meets, but you have the flexibility. So, yeah, I mean, the solution I think will be very specific to each organization, because it will depend on the data, the demographic data that is there. And B, it has to be co-created. It can't be created by, let's say, the CEO and the HR head and just rolled out. It has to be co-created with different levels. You have to do enough pulse and service so that everybody, so that there are no surprises for anybody later on after you've
True.
rolled out the policy. So that's
True.
there. And communication has to be there. You may actually roll out a policy, and then you might have learnings, and then you might have to actually revoke a policy or modify it a little bit, so that openness to learning and feedback in the first couple of months has to be there. And finally, the thing that never goes out of fashion, whether it is COVID or normal period, is you have to create psychological safety. It's been a very stressful situation for everybody. Now that people are back, hopefully it's going to be better times than COVID times. You have to create that psychological safety and sharpen. I'm not saying relax performance management criteria, but I'm saying sharpen the performance management focus, so that it is very data driven and it is very outcome focused, so that you don't have problems of presentism and only physical people in office getting the moolah and back home. So you have to have that. I mean, there's an interesting anecdote, you may have also read in the papers a couple of days ago. So as America was preparing to get back to work, okay, there were one or two big companies who said, okay, we would encourage actually more people coming and joining office, because if you can go to a restaurant, you can jolly well come to office. And guess what happened to those companies? They were faced suddenly in the next 1 month, they were faced with like a 20-30% attrition, because people are saying, okay, I mean, I have more options closer to my place. So,
Yeah.
so I think companies, it has to be guided by that war for talent and by the talent that you already have in your company. And if it can be co-created, then people on all sides will make adjustments to make it happen. So, but if the relationship itself is very transactional, okay, and where the employee himself or herself is not sure whether the company will look after him or her if he or she falls ill, then you're going to have a very different set of subversive activities. So, I mean, I hope I was specific enough, but that's what I strongly feel, that again, no one size fits all. You will have to look at the data, and you will have to have the right leadership intent, which has an eye on both the business outcomes necessary and on the safety and well-being of the employees who will deliver those objectives.
Absolute points, absolutely. And I believe that, in a holistic manner, if every company takes these points, vital points, and I'm sure most of the challenges, what we call it as challenges, definitely everybody will overcome. So now we have, more or less
And
moved
to
into
just
this.
add,
Yes, please.
I'll just add one more
Right,
point, and
right.
it's just a reiteration. It's not a new point, but that focus on skilling and reskilling has to be
Mhm.
there. The only shift
Right,
I see is the employee takes now more responsibility for keeping himself or herself relevant, and
right.
once that happens, then the onus is also on the employee to script roles or script career pathways that makes sense to that person. And for that, I think there'll be a lot of mentoring, lot of requirement for coaching, mentoring, access to that. And so that's an area where companies can look at providing. I mean, typically you have coaching and executive mentoring only for, let's say, high potential or very senior people. If you can actually democratize that and bring that down and offer it to larger proportions, I think in general, you'll see a happier workforce.
Absolutely. Yeah, this is very important and also very relevant, as you rightly mentioned, because this will, they would, the kind of communication, the patterns of communication will also change. And though performance management is data centric, there would be all these outcomes which becomes measurable, there would be smart goals and everything, but the regular communication, and what is it like earlier days, we remember we used to be more focused on the feedback mechanisms, but now it's more into feed forward, like how you take it up. So these aspects, I'm sure,
Right.
it's reinventing the complete concept of not only human resources as a function, but also the other general management functions as well. So this is very interesting. And as we are talking about learning, and we have moved on to complete this scenario of future of work. So maybe to understand from you, Indrani, like, how can we evolve? This future of work, how it can be evolved and ensure that, we are leaving no one behind, because that's the main theme and the crux of our subject. So how can we ensure that?
uh, I think, just kind of taking all the points that have come up in the discussion and integrating that. uh,
Right.
the future of work, will rely on tech and tech for good. Which so tech for good is one big thing. It has to be like a overarching theme that guides all functions, all strategies, all initiatives. Vertically, horizontally. Like tech is the mesh. Second, along with tech, you also have to, the H factor also needs to increase, which means the human factor. Human is not just restricted to HR. The whole company, the leadership, etc. It's the human face of leadership that needs to also be there and take it forward. Because end of the day, I mean, tech will just simplify processes. Tech will make redundant. Tech will help in managing large scale complicated processes, but tech cannot resolve organization complexities. So there you really need leadership that is authentic, that is, that believes in trust, that looks at teams as human beings, and really believes in the potential of the team. So therefore they will invest then in skilling, reskilling, career paths, all of that. I've seen employees stick around with the company. I mean, anyway, it's said that people join companies, but they leave bosses, right? So it's not that, even if a company is going through a very
Right.
tough financial thing, or you've still not come out of the financial impact of COVID, your employees are going to leave you. If you've been honest, authentic with them, if you've shared transparently, what is it and what needs to be done. In a lot of cases, the employee himself or herself will actually come and say, hey, this is what I can do, why don't you, they will actually volunteer for measures to be taken. But as long as it's co-created, only because the trust, so that has to be there. So future of work, if you ask me to kind of summarize, it relies on tech, it relies on the H factor, or what I call trust and authenticity, leadership authenticity. And it certainly relies on, I will call it imagination, for want of a better word. You've used reimagine, of course, but you need imagination to really see spaces, see needs that need solutions, see how your product or your service can be pivoted. Really, even HR, if we look at it, I mean, a lot HR and tech in HR has been prevalent in the last couple of years, and it's such an exciting thing. But it's still improving, let's say, existing processes. But I think you also have to almost at times flip HR completely, and just see, if I completely flipped something, what is it leading to. You might actually have some great results there. I mean, I'll just give you an example. I mean, the startup that we've now come up with, Growth Shift, that is really a startup born out of the pandemic and trying to resolve a problem that the pandemic brought forward. Okay, I mean, it is in the space of career mentoring and career scripting. But what it does is it's basically taken the executive mentoring concept and it's flipped it, and it said it's not, why should it only be available to a select few. We will democratize access using technology and offer it to anybody who needs it, whether you are in a job, whether you are at the top of your game, whether you are looking for a job, anybody, because mentoring, whoever has undergone mentoring and executive coaching, they swear by it. So that's, I mean, that's just one example I gave you, but there are lots and lots of, I mean, if you look at the startup world, you will see the kind of innovation happening. And I think that's a great indicator of the future of work as well. Fluid workforces, liquid workforces, flexible arrangements, a lot of new ideas backed by tech, backed by forward looking investors, and really addressing newer and newer buckets of customers.
I guess that we speak about future, but future is actually it's now. I mean, it's the opportunity now to take a call. So I go back to my earlier script, which I was mentioning about, like how do we actually embrace it. So that's all. Depends that how we actually take the call and we embrace that. Very relevant points in Rani. I think how Monita had started off with the theme and the context setting, it has really given us very, very vital points and very important inputs as an organization, at an organization level, from an employer perspective, from an employee, as well as from the general workforce and to all the levels of the economy. So yes, I think if we just put it in one nutshell, or to summarize it in that manner, it would be that let's stay relevant, and how we can actually ensure to see that the workforce is in place, and as every company, maturing company, that no one is left behind, we ensure that. Monita?
Absolutely, absolutely. Thank you so much, Sushmita. That was a beautiful summary that you have given us from the discussion. And as always, Indrani, we always have been very privileged to have you. This is the second time that you have come. You have taken out time for us. And what a fabulous insight from the discussions we had. So, one thing was clear across tracks: people is the heart of everything. And nature of work, and probably the nature of workforce for that matter, will evolve in the recent years again. So chiefly there is no going back to the livelihoods, or if you may call it the career building model that has prevailed pre-pandemic. While we hear from both of you that technology will play an increasingly pivotal role in providing, rails for a hybrid workplace, that is what everybody calls it. But be it large, small, startups, for profits, non-profits, society organizations like Anudeep, we all have an onus. The onus to give choices, the onus to have responsibilities, to build opportunities, to give the choices that are sustainable and choices that will leverage the potential of all individuals and of humanity as a whole. Chipping in the H factor, which Indrani mentioned. Human is the heart of people, and people makes an organization. So it's always following the theme of the UN agenda, to leave no one behind. I think with this, we come to the end of the session. We thought previously, I remember speaking with both Indrani and Sushmita, that we are going to wind up it within 40 minutes, but this is a topic and a theme. And of course, with leadership discussions, this is never ending. So I think we are already close to the topic. And thank you again, both of you, for joining in. I'm sure there are many questions, and I would definitely share the questionnaire to both of you so that we can again rewind and answer professionals who are watching it. And thank you again. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I want
It
to
was a
thank
pleasure.
both of you. Pleasure, absolutely. Always a privilege to be
Absolute
part
pleasure.
of Anudeep. And thank you, Sushmita, and thank you, Monita, for really lifting the quality of conversation. I have
True.
so enjoyed the conversation, and really, I think the future
My
of work
pleasure. My pleasure.
indeed depends on leaving no one behind. I think that's the future of work. It must not leave
Absolutely.
anyone behind. Thank you very much.
Absolutely. Thank you. All the best. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, both of you. So we were very excited, and we ended the first interview, the first talk show with the face and sound of leadership with Indrani Chakraborty. I'm sure next month we would be back with again a very inciting topic and amazingly, fruitful discussion. Thank you, everybody. Wishing you a good weekend in advance. I know it's Thursday, but happy weekend and stay safe and healthy. Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.